It was another day of fun and mischief as my brothers and I tended my father's field. However, on this particular day, our younger brother Joseph felt it necessary to head home and tell our father about all the things that my brothers and I had done wrong in the field. Whilst journeying home, we expected grave punishment because we knew that our father favored Joseph and that he would believe anything that he had said. When we entered our home, we found our father placing a colorful coat over Joseph, which signified his favoritism of Joseph. It was at this point that that it was as if my father had driven a knife straight into my heart. And the jealousy and envy burned rife within me and my brothers. It was in response to this that we devised a plan to kill Joseph and get rid of him. Several days later, we journeyed to Shechem to herd some of my father's other sheep. It was in one of the afternoons that Joseph had approached us, claiming that he was sent by our father to check up on us. It was here where we devised a plan to kill Joseph and throw him in one of the cisterns. However, our brother Reuben intervened and said, instead of killing him, let us simply throw him into the cistern so that his blood would not be on our hands. It was here where my brother and I, Issachar and I, took Joseph and threw him into one of the cisterns. Later, whilst we were having lunch, I recognized a caravan of Ishmaelites who seemed to have been coming from Gilead and heading to Egypt carrying many goods. It was at this point that I was wrestling with not wanting Joseph's blood on my hands, but desiring for him to be gone. Therefore, I suggested to my brothers that we sell Joseph to the Ishmaelites, and that way we can get rid of him whilst not having any blood on our hands and receiving profit in return. After this, we needed to devise a plan to deceive our father about the fact that Joseph had died a natural death. We took his coat that we had stripped from him and dipped it in goat's blood. Returning home, we gave it to our father, claiming that a wild beast had killed and eaten Joseph. Our father was greatly grieved. He mourned severely and sought not to be comforted. It was after this major event that I visited an Adullamite named Hiram. It was here where I was met by a beautiful lady named Shua. I sought to break family covenant with her. I went into her, and she bore me 3 sons, the first the second Onan, and the third Shelah. My first 2 sons, and Onan, were unfortunately killed by God because of their grave disobedience towards God. This left Er's wife, Tamar, my daughter-in-law, all on her own. Expectant of my third son, Shelah, to marry her, I was afraid because of what had happened to my first 2 sons. Therefore, I told Tamar that it is better for her to remain a widow. Whilst I was journeying, after my wife Shua had died, I journeyed to Timnah to visit the sheep shearers. It was along the way that I was met by a prostitute. I went into her, and after going into her, she sought a pledge as a promise that I would pay her the 1 goat. I pledged by giving her my signet, my bracelets, and my staff. It was 3 months later that I was approached, and someone told me that Tamar had fallen into infidelity and she was pregnant. I was infuriated, and I condemned her for her sin. However, when I approached her, she showed me the signet, bracelets, and staff, and I realized that she was the prostitute that I had went into, and I was the one that had impregnated her. After this, 6 months later, she bore twins, Perez and Zerah. There was a great famine in Canaan, and my father had heard that there was food that was being sold in the land of Egypt. He sent my brothers and I to Egypt to go and buy food for our family. It was upon arriving in Egypt that we were met by an Egyptian official who was the one overseeing the selling and buying of goods. Bowing, appealing to him that we have come to buy goods, he accused us of being spies and told us that we had come to scout out the open land. We pleaded with him, saying that we were not here to do so, but he continued exclaiming that we were spies. Therefore, he threw us in jail, and it was during this time amidst this turmoil, that my brothers and I had realized that the punishment we'd at first felt unjust that we were facing was actually just, because it was in response to that which we had done to our brother Joseph. It was 3 days later that we were released from jail, and the Egyptian official told us that we are to return home and fetch our younger brother who is at home as proof that we are actually from the land of Canaan, and that our father is there waiting for us in response to us bringing food. However, he said he would keep one of our brothers, Simeon, in prison. Upon returning home, we told our father of all that had happened, and he mourned greatly, as he had now lost a second son, Simeon, to the Egyptians. There was a continuation of the famine. Therefore, our father approached us and said again, we need to go. But at this point, I pleaded with my father to allow Benjamin to come with us, because I knew we would face even greater danger if we headed back to Egypt without him with us this time. I convinced my father by telling him that I would take Benjamin's life into my own hands and ensure his safety. My father was convinced and let us go. Upon returning to the Egyptian official, he received us well and gave us bags of food. After this, we desired to return home, and whilst journeying home, we recognized that in Benjamin's bag there was a silver cup that belonged to our bags were full of money, and within Benjamin's bag there was a silver cup that belonged to the officials, or to this very Egyptian official. Fearing for our lives, we returned to Egypt, pleading with them, saying that we had not stolen these things. But one of the servants of the official blessed us, saying we have been blessed by God to receive these things. And while we entered the court, the Egyptian official punished and said that the one in whose bag the silver cup was, it is he who must be punished, which was Benjamin. And desiring not for my younger brother to be punished, but also to uphold the word that I had given to my brother, I told the Egyptian official that I would give my life in place of Benjamin's. And I offered up myself. It was at this point that the Egyptian official cleared the room, and unbeknown to me, the most amazing thing had happened at that point, and it was that the Egyptian official had revealed himself as Joseph. My brothers and I were stunned. We did not know what to do. And he sought us, and he called us to embrace him. And it was at that moment that we had a beautiful reunion, recognizing that Joseph had not died and that our brother was with us again. It was after this that Joseph had instructed us to go home and fetch our father Jacob, telling him that Joseph is alive and that we need to come and settle in the land of Egypt, and that he would set out a specific place for us, separate from the Egyptians, where we could have rest and homage together. After the dust had settled, my brother and I, Joseph and I, sat and we spoke about many of the things that had happened after we had sold him into slavery. And he just shared the grace of God and the mercy of God that was revealed as he was raised up in Potiphar's house. However, Potiphar's wife sought to deceive him, which led to him being thrown in prison. But even there, in prison, God was with him, after which, and it was in prison that he discovered that he had the ability to interpret dreams. And it was after this that he was raised up again to the place that he had found himself under the hand of Pharaoh as an Egyptian official ruling the produce that would be sold. And it was after this that as a family we all settled together in the land of Egypt. This story had a significant impact on me whilst researching the life of Joseph, and just even seeing his dedication to the Father and his willingness to obey God in the sight of temptation, especially whilst being seduced by Potiphar's wife, struck me deep, just in the way that he was willing to not fall into temptation because of his desire to obey his master and also God. It was an amazing opportunity, and I loved even sharing it from Judah's perspective and seeing it from a completely different lens, and even what he experienced having made severe mistakes and seeking to redeem himself at a later stage, and seeing how just his character had changed throughout the story. It was a great privilege. The setting was my room. The initial video that I have made was just to myself, However, I am planning on sharing this story in many areas, especially in my cell group, as well as at the Bible school that I currently work for, and just even using this method of teaching more frequently, and even looking from this lens and placing myself within the context historically and just emotionally that many of the characters within the Bible are in, to try and learn more and more just from what God is seeking to say through their lives and just what happened. Yeah.